I recently hosted a women's Bible study, and the topic was, do we really trust Him? Do we really trust Christ? So we started with the definition. What is trust? Trust is the firm belief, the firm ability to trust something, to believe in something, someone. So if you look at your relationship, let's say with a family member versus a stranger on the street, who would you trust more? And what's the difference? Well, the difference is your relationship, the relationship between you and a stranger, and the relationship between you and, let's say, a sibling or a parent or a good friend. The difference is you've invested into that relationship. You've invested time. You've invested secrets, right? You test relationships out. You see the more that you move forward, if things are moving forward, if confidence is being exchanged properly, you begin to build more and more and more trust, right? So you cannot trust someone that you don't know. Would we agree? So how can I trust God if I don't know God? How can you trust God if you don't know God? Something to think about. So let's compare it. For instance, say the seed is your relationship with Christ. It all starts as a seed. So God gives us the supplies to nurture and grow this relationship, but we have to actively use the supplies that He supplies us with in order for the relationship to grow, correct? So how do we get to know God? Through His Word. So a verse here in John 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So right there in a simple verse, we see that this Word is God. This Word is Jesus. There's no disconnect. How do we get to know Him? Communion. We open Scripture and we learn about Him, and we get to know His attributes, His characteristics, and they're so rich, and He has so many promises. And one thing that I can tell you is God is a God of His Word, and He maintains His Word. He's not a liar. If He says something, it's because it's the truth. We read Isaiah 43, and we did learn about a few characteristics of Him. I talked about God being our comfort, being our Redeemer, being our strength. Those are some things that I learned personally, actually, when we were reading in Isaiah. But Isaiah 43 actually says, do not fear. He's talking to Israel, but a lot of times God's children are compared to Israel. It's a reflection of us. Israel constantly would run from God and betray God and seek other gods, and they would come back, and don't we all? Just like Adam and Eve. So, Psalm 92, it says, the righteous thrive like a palm tree and grow like a cedar tree in Lebanon. So I like to say that because going back to this analogy we planted, right, that little seed is the beginning of our relationship with Christ. He provides the supplies, but we have to do the work of nurturing. This is time, for instance. I just put in time by reading Scripture. I just put in prayer. I'm reading, I'm praying, seeking God, speaking to God. Maybe it's fasting. You'll learn about that the closer you get to God. Maybe it's communion with other believers. So the analogy, you're consistently feeding into your relationship with Christ. And like all good things, it takes time, but eventually you start growing and your faith starts growing. And this is what ends up happening. This is what your faith looks like. You go from a seed to a beautiful flower, and it flourishes, and your soul, this is your soul. Your soul begins to be cultivated, and it begins to grow in God's relationship, and you begin to find out His will, and you begin to become fulfilled and understand your purpose in life. And I could go on, but it's been 5 minutes. I hope you enjoyed.